Welcome to our third panel today. Change leadership is intentional, consistent, and persistent. Building a hybrid workforce through embedding telework involves the whole organization. Change at this scale doesn't happen overnight, and without a plan to keep it going, it can easily grind to a stop before it reaches its goals. Leaders have to communicate the vision of where the organization needs to go and why, and then have a plan to get that message and the changes across the organization and down into the staff ranks. They have to give people permission to let go of the old ways while showing them new approaches, and it helps to have a catalyst. For DMV, leaders knew they needed a new approach if DMV was going to meet demand for new federally required Real ID without causing massive delays. For the Energy Commission, the catalyst was the move to a new building. Adding in telework offered the chance to rethink their whole approach to real estate and the culture they now had a chance to create. CalTrans was out of space and quickly saw emergency telework as not just a challenge, but a huge opportunity to make permanent change. But with 20,000 people spread border to border, it wasn't going to happen if everyone waited to be told how to do it. Up first, we have Kathleen Webb, Chief Deputy Director at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Kathleen has put her coaching and development skills to work in a department that was just beginning its change journey. Kathleen, can you tell us what got DMV started on its change journey and what some of the major steps have been?
Hi, Gabby, and thank you. Thank you so much for having me on here. I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of this storytelling with both Drew and Aaron, because this is a really important topic at this point in time for all of us as state departments. For those of you who have been following the news for any length of time, I know the DMV has been in the news with regards to some of the struggles we've had in delivering services to our customers. And so the modernization journey for the DMV really started with the engagement of the GovOps Strike Team back in January of 2019 as they worked with the DMV to explore ways to improve the customer service and also expand our digital services. You know, as with many organizations with COVID impacting all of us, we really had to step back and also rethink how we continue to deliver our services. The good thing about where we were positioned is that we already were exercising an innovative mindset, and we'd already brought on technology innovators at the DMV. So our ability to pivot and accelerate our digital services for our customers and expand our remote work capability was just exciting, and it was really great to see how we pivoted so quickly. Now, how we approach remote work opportunities is probably a little bit different than other departments. As the state's largest retail operation with 190 service locations that includes also a manufacturing arm, we believe we are on the right track, but many of our jobs are just not amenable to telework. But I say not amenable at this time. So our challenge right now is really creating a hybrid work environment where everyone's contribution is recognized and valued, but allows us to seamlessly deliver services to everyone, anywhere. The good news is that staff also recognize that to expand our remote work capability, we have to expand our digital platform and then their ability to use these new tools and systems of work. So to modernize the DMV operations, we'll have to retire our legacy systems, and we've been in the news for those as we share with people. Some of our systems started off with Governor Pat Brown and had some modifications with Governor Jerry Brown, but we really haven't had a wholesale upgrade of our systems here. So that's going to be an important part of what we do. But the reality is that alone is not going to transform the DMV. We also have to change our organizational culture and to ensure our people can adapt to the dynamic environment we all work in, and then adopt new technology to better serve our customers and, frankly, our employees. So while we recognize this incredible need to change and focus on change management, we also saw this as an opportunity to align with our new strategic plan that reflects the vision and direction of the governor and the new DMV leadership. So while we were creating a vision and kind of what I call a playbook to achieve our results, we also addressed the cultural shift we needed to make and refreshed our core values. We believe our new values, which has actually been developed by an employee engagement focus group, will serve as the directional guidepost to help us modernize the DMV and then be an employer of choice.
And how is DMV driving change deep into the organization so that it sticks after the consultants go home?
Gabby, that is a great question, and one certainly in all my experiences with departments we have to be thoughtful about. You know, it's important to keep in mind that organizational change is not something that consultants do for you. They can certainly offer a framework and they can offer some tools, but the organization and the people within the organization have to recognize it as a priority and commit the resources and embrace change champions at all levels of the organization. So at the DMV, our change management initiative has led to the development of a change management network, identification of change champions throughout the organization and at all levels of the organization. And we've also now launched several efforts to really engage this change management team. And the two areas that I share with you that have been really exciting as we go forward is really re-examining our employee communication tools, especially as we think about a hybrid work environment. What do employee communication tools look like, especially in an environment where not all of our employees have access to email? And then the other piece I'm really excited about is refreshing our employee recognition program that will now include a peer recognition category. So some wonderful things for us to go ahead and test our change management network and get the feedback and information that we need from our staff to just continue to improve the DMV organization. We've also developed a 6-part leadership playbook, and I call it a playbook because things change, and I want my leaders to have a playbook so they can also be the most effective leaders that they can be. And one of the modules in this 6-part session was actually really thinking about and understanding the importance of organizational awareness and scanning the environment. And when I talk about scanning the environment, it's so important for people to learn how to use this skill so that we are better able to anticipate, forecast, and prepare for change. Because change is always happening. And we're probably always going to have a change management network. But I need leaders to really be paying attention to their environments and what do we see coming at us. We're going to also cascade this program throughout our leadership ranks.
What can others learn from DMV's experience about taking on organizational change?
Thanks, Gabby. Well, I think that's somewhat of a loaded question. I don't know if everybody wants to learn from DMV, but let me share with you what we've done and what we've learned, and if you can take some pearls from it, great. I think one of the things I would share is that it's easy to think of modernization as just focused on IT, but the reality is, and a large part of it is, but the reality is it's also about people and processes. And so at the DMV, one of the things that we're also in the initial stages of doing is developing a 5-year workforce plan that parallels our strategic plan. We need a roadmap that informs our talent management planning and cultivates us as a learning organization, because that's really going to be important as we think about change. That means assessing competency gaps, and I think folks will talk about that as well, and developing a learning plan to grow, develop, and upskill our staff. Really critical things that need to happen at the DMV. It's also going to require our leaders to ensure an environment that supports the use of career development planning tools and incorporates coaching and evaluation in support of learning and growth. And that's going to be so important when you're also in this hybrid environment with remote workers. I will share with you that I've looked to the work done by Cover California and CalPERS, who have developed some really good programs, and we can learn from them as well. Additionally, I cannot stress enough the importance always of doing one-on-ones with your staff. But as we move into this remote work environment, this is going to be so critical to take time to have those conversations with your staff and talk about their growth and their career development. Now, I know, because I've heard it from people before, Kathleen, I got enough on my plate. I don't have time to do this. And my response back to them is I suggest that they look at how they're spending their time between leading their team versus managing the work. And leading your team means you also have to carve out time for those one-on-ones. The other thing I always encourage them to do as they think about time and attention management is how are you spending your time? How do you manage your attention so you're focusing your work and your thoughts on the right things at the right time? How are you actually maybe delegating assignments that maybe you're currently doing to your staff for their own growth and development? And really critical to find balance between the need to be a leader of your people and a manager of the work. So the other thing that I also stress as we think about this is the need for us to understand that we all cope and manage change very differently. And fear of change is a real issue. So one of the things we need to think about as leaders of the organization is how we model the way for our teams to move forward, minimize stress, which the stress itself, and I know all of you have probably seen this, sometimes can create a paralysis within your workforce. So you need to be thoughtful about how you're addressing that. And you need to remind staff that our intentions are not to leave anyone behind as we make these changes. We also need to find ways to get staff involved with the change that's happening and doing it in fun ways. One of the things we did here at the DMV as we were expanding our website presence is we developed a chatbot. So we created a contest for the naming of our chatbot and got staff involved with it. And of course, they came up with the best name for our chatbot. Our chatbot is called Miles. Thank you to my DMV staff. As we move forward with our workforce plan, I think the other thing that others probably will reflect on is the need to really examine the competencies needed to perform the work now and into the future. And so we'll be looking at what are the essential competencies for our workforce, how does that address our classifications and duty statements, and really create an environment that is supportive of career development. The other thing I really like about this effort is it should align with the work that's been done by CalHR around core competencies and leadership competencies. So that's a great effort that we're going to be undertaking as we do our workforce plan. The other thing I really encourage people to think about, particularly in this day and age, is thinking about how you assess your talent needs for your program areas now and going into the future. I often think about this and coach my own folks on it, is to think about it as if you were a competitive team. And if you were a competitive team, you wouldn't actually bring on people with all the exact same skill sets. I think about, we're in baseball season right now, and I think about a baseball team. You probably wouldn't win too many games if all of your players were pitchers, right? You would be hard pressed to win a game. And I think you have to think about that as your own team as well. How do you build a high performing team with all the skill sets you need for your team to be successful? But the other part of it is, as you recruit and bring on people that maybe have different skill sets, think about how you're making sure that people feel they're part of the team, have a valued contribution, and operate in an inclusive environment that's accepting of all those different skill sets you bring to the team. So I ask my folks, as they're thinking about handling vacancies, is ask yourself where your knowledge, skill, and behavior gaps are, and what do you need to address to make your team better?
Thank you, Kathleen. Up next, we have Drew Bohan, Executive Director of the California Energy Commission. The Energy Commission was considering a modest step toward teleworking before COVID struck, but events moved quickly and new choices offered themselves up. For everyone, it was a new world. Thank you, Drew, for joining us. So much has happened at the Energy Commission in such a short amount of time. It's easy to look back from the outside and think you must have had a plan from the start. Did you?
No, we did not. Thank you, Gabby. The Energy Commission is pleased to be a part of this training, but we did not have a grand plan by any means. But early on, we saw that we needed a lead, and we did. By late March of last year, we realized it wasn't safe to come into the office. So all of our senior managers led by example and immediately began working from home and not coming into the office. We also realized that it was critical to provide our staff with the resources they needed to be successful as soon as possible. So we are fortunate in that we have truly remarkable staff at the CEC, and they stepped up and they adapted really quickly to this new teleworking environment. The other thing that was really important, I think, for us was transparency. This has been a hallmark of CEC leadership, even when we don't have a crystal clear vision of what the future is, which was the case here. We went to great lengths to be open and transparent. I started email updates fairly regularly to staff. Our chair, David Hochschild, got personally engaged. We hosted all staff town halls where all 5 of our commissioners would participate from time to time, and even our secretary, Wade Crowfoot, spoke at some of them. And we listened. We took multiple surveys to seek staff input, and I reminded staff about an anonymous suggestion box I maintain, and they used it. Many of the good ideas that we came up with over this last year to adapt to this new world came from individual staff who shared their ideas.
Great. And what did you learn from your staff surveys, and how did you manage such a significant change?
Well, our very first survey we did pretty much right away. I think it was April of last year. And we asked staff a number of really simple questions. One of which was, do you want to continue to telework once the pandemic subsides? And the response was remarkable. Nearly everybody, 93%, said, yes, we do. Then we did subsequent surveys, and we asked a number of different things. And one of the things we asked was, all right, so the vast majority of our staff want to telework. How often do you want to do so? And the average was 3 days a week. So this gave us confidence pretty early on that a telework-centric work environment was going to work for us, and it was something that our staff would like. Of course, then and even now, not everything's perfect for all of our staff in terms of teleworking. We've got some staff who have home situations where they've got loved ones that need certain special care. Maybe they have children that can present distractions. They might live in an apartment with others who are causing disruptions that make it a little difficult. Some staff need special tools. And a theme that runs through a lot of our organizations, having spoken to my colleagues, is that we just miss each other. And coworker camaraderie is an important part of our culture, and Zoom and those tools are very helpful, but they just really aren't the same as meeting in person. But we did our level best early on to help staff as best we could. So we ordered laptops quickly, and we got laptops deployed to everybody in the organization that wanted one. We also allowed very early on staff to take equipment home, in particular monitors and chairs and other things like that that make working from home easier. We also tried out a number of the virtual meeting tools and ultimately landed on Zoom and Teams, both of which we've been very happy with. We also continue to communicate regularly as things evolved. This included the establishment of a comms hub, a communications hub on our SharePoint site to share tools and ideas. And maybe most importantly, again, a theme with this whole experience has been listening. We continue to listen carefully to what our staff had to share. More recently, in March of this year, we established a team that we call our change agents. We invited staff to participate if they were interested, and about 60 stepped forward. We have about 700 staff, and about 60 of them raised their hands and said, yeah, we'll volunteer to participate in this. And this team has just been critical to our success. We would not be where we are without this team. And we're planning a move into the new Natural Resources building on 8th and P in July. And just briefly, I'll tell you a little bit about the Change Agent Group. It's a team composed of staff from throughout the organization and at all levels of the organization. In fact, our Change Agent in Chief, we call her, Brianna Williams, who's doing an amazing job. She's leading the effort, and she's a staff services analyst, so she's not among the senior management ranks, but she sure acts like it. You wouldn't know from the way she conducts her leadership role on this Change Agent team. They have three principal tasks. The first is to help bring along staff. So each one of them goes back to their unit and talks to everybody in their unit and makes sure each staff person is heard. Their questions are being heard and then answered as best we can. And whatever concerns they have, we're seeing if we can't address those as well. The second job of the change agents is to collect ideas. So as they're meeting with their teams and learning what questions and concerns they have, they're also asking them, what do they think? What should we do? How should we do? Any number of things we're trying to figure out when we move into this new environment. We've gotten a bunch of very big ideas, broad brushstroke ideas, and some really in the weeds ones as well. And then finally, the third thing that this change agent group is doing is they're populating about, I think it's 9 or 10 subgroups that we've created. And these subgroups are charged with looking at specific sets of issues like governance, equipment needs, hoteling software, and those sorts of things. So this has been a great tool for us, the use of these change agents to help us navigate this new world.
And did you have a permissive telework policy prior to the pandemic that you could build from?
No, we really didn't, Gabby. Our telework policy was pretty stingy. Only a small number of staff teleworked with any regularity before the pandemic hit. Personally, I hadn't given a whole lot of thought to the pros and cons of teleworking, but will confess I was somewhat of a skeptic about its effectiveness. By April of last year, however, I've become a true believer, particularly after our surveys revealed how enthusiastic staff were in the main with teleworking and how much they appreciated the benefits. And as the data came in, we saw that our productivity was stable or even improving in some respects. So we felt as though this telework environment wasn't impacting our success negatively at all. To the contrary. We also looked at some data from our sister agency. We don't have a system of ID badges that check you in. We have a guard at the front of our building currently. But we looked at that data, and it showed something very interesting. Staff were surveyed in this organization, and they were asked, how often are you coming into the office? And the answer was about 90%. staff self-reported that they felt they were coming into the office most of the time. But the data told a different story. It turned out that, in fact, only about 2/3 of the time were staff coming into the office. So on any given day, the building was only 2/3 filled. So when last summer rolled around, the California Natural Resources Agency invited us to join them in the new building that's being built that I was just describing, that's nearly done. And we agreed to do so and began planning for how we could accommodate our staff, again, about 700, in the space we were allotted, which accommodated a desk space for only about 400. So how do we deal with this mismatch? Well, what we realized, again, is that with this understanding that staff in a normal environment aren't coming in 90% of the time or 100% of the time, they're coming in quite a bit less. And that was with a fairly restrictive telework policy. We figured that with a very open one, which is what we're going to end up with. We're working on that right now and are eager to learn from others who are working on those. But we expect to have ours done pretty soon. But we realized we could pull this off. And not only that, we could save significant money. We closed in February or March of this year one of our satellite offices that housed our research team. That will save our organization and the taxpayers that fund us $600,000 per year. And we're going to save even more by shrinking our footprint moving into the new building. So we started making plans in earnest for this move last summer, and we still have a long way to go, but we feel like we're in a really good place to jump into our new hybrid telework in-office model starting this July. We envision a vibrant new office in a building filled with staff excited about collaborating with their colleagues. If you're there, we expect you're largely going to be doing collaborative type work, the contemplative work, the work you can do on your own, you can do at home, you can do it at a coffee shop, lots of options there. And then, the virtual meeting tools allow us to connect folks who are at home or somewhere else and those in the office. And these tools, of course, all of us have realized are extremely valuable, but they have limitations, so we will have some in-office work as well. So we didn't have a permissive telework policy, but we're working on one right now.
Thank you for that information, Drew. Now I'd like to introduce Erin Ochoco, Deputy Director at CalTrans. CalTrans early on saw the sudden shift to telework as the ultimate pilot program and started to look for ways to extend telework post-pandemic. A key part of that was to make the strategy employer-driven. Can you tell us how that translated into how CalTrans organized that effort and what actions it took?
Thank you, Gabby. It's an honor to be here today with you and Kathleen and Drew. Our story at CalTrans started prior to the pandemic. We had 250 of our team members that were teleworking. To consider that we have a team of 21,000 employees, our telework program was very small and very restrictive. And when the pandemic hit, we transitioned 12,000 employees to telework in a matter of days. So that was a pretty epic endeavor for us. And we had to take steps. We created multiple task force directly related to COVID and multiple task force on telework. We didn't just look at the policies and the procedures. We also looked at the resources and tools that would be necessary to make our staff be able to be successful while teleworking. We had to deploy 11,000 laptops, which you might just think is a resource or tool, but the procurement process and the deployment process took a great deal of leadership and teamwork throughout. So it was a great accomplishment along with the resources and tools that we developed. What we saw through the emergency telework was that we had the ability to be successful in telework. We saw that we had the ability to think about post-pandemic and how we'll have an employer-driven telework. One that we promote telework as leaders throughout the department, but we also enable our staff to have input. Employer-driven to us means that we provide the resources and tools for folks to be successful. We look at job functions and if those job functions are conducive to telework and look at outlining the resources and tools for folks to be successful. We immediately saw that down the road, this would be a great recruitment tool as well, not just with CalTrans, but within the state to be an employer of choice. And those were all great lessons learned throughout the process.
Can you share more about the tools and resources CalTrans has created to support telework?
The employees cannot be successful without the appropriate resources and tools. So first, we had the deployment of the laptops, and that took some time for some areas. We decided that we were going to go with the WebEx and MS Teams, Microsoft Teams virtual software, which actually enabled us to become closer together as an organization. And we serve the entire state, like a lot of state departments do. We have 12 districts all over the state. And it proved that through WebEx and Microsoft Teams that we could have collaborative meetings from the southernmost part of the state to the northernmost part, and we could do them just right away. We also created some flow charts so we could look at what jobs were conducive to telework and quick tips for telework. So there would be things like conference calls. We've all been part of those conference calls that just didn't go so right. We decided that we needed to provide our team some tips and tricks to be successful in conference calls and WebEx and Microsoft Teams. So we looked and took an entire assessment of all of our leadership programs. We laid down our leadership competencies and what would be really key and important for our leaders to be successful at all levels, even entry level. Leadership competencies such as change commitment, which is very important when navigating through a change as epic as permanent telework or even emergency telework. And then we looked at all of our courses. Which ones could we convert to a virtual format? So we worked with CalHR on the supervisor development program and our various levels of leadership training, such as management training program and our leadership training programs, which we have 2 levels. We were able to make those virtual and partnering with our partners such as Sacramento State, and as I mentioned, as CalHR. We were also able to sign up 12,000 of our folks for LinkedIn Learning. And that's really, really been exciting because we've been able to integrate that into everything that we do. We've signed up for a business book series for all of our managers and supervisors. And with the LinkedIn Learning and our business book series, we tie them all into our leadership competencies so that supervisors know that it really will enable them and empower them to be successful in the jobs that they're doing. So these are all areas that have really not just been resources and tools, but it's also expanded our capacity and increased our resources and tools, our partnerships, and our communication throughout the state.
And how do you get your managers and supervisors on board?
It's a challenge. As John C. Maxwell says, everything rises and falls on leadership. So it's really about having a strong commitment and strong engagement. And we have had strong commitment and engagement from myself and the entire executive team on telework. In fact, even before telework, Director Ochoco and the entire executive board met together and we talked about core values. And one of those core values was engagement. And I truly believe that has been key to our success on emergency telework and will be as we transition to a more permanent. Also, our commitment to change. And our department, of the top 150 leaders, 80 of them, including myself, are new in the position that they hold within the last year. 80 of 150. And so we've tried to be transparent with staff that we're navigating through change as well. We're part of this telework adventure and all of the change commitment that we have to be part of. And we're focused on providing the resources and support. We've tried to encourage our supervisors and leaders to look at it as an opportunity to create a new culture and really help develop on multiple levels. Talked about recruitment and looking at it again at all levels as opportunity to better communicate, to have better outreach, and to have better partnerships as well. And be part of the solution at all levels. And when we say get the supervisors on board, it's also managing up as well. What are the successes that our staff have had, and how do we build on them? How do we pose questions so that we know we're going to be successful, such as what has worked? How can we improve? And how do we move forward together to enable our folks to complete the strategic plan that we have as a department and all of the critical missions of the department?
An interesting question right here. What is the process for CalTrans in reclassifying jobs as telework jobs?
So we actually will not be reclassifying jobs. We do look at the job functions. So we might have, as many state departments have, associate government program analysts that do different jobs throughout the state. And we'll look at the functions that each one is responsible for. And those that are conducive for telework, we're going to encourage and try and set them up for success in telework. And that's not to say that the other functions won't someday be conducive to telework. We're always open to innovation and ideas. But we won't, again, be reclassifying jobs. We will just be looking at the job functions. The duty statements will reflect the ability to telework. Our job expectation memos will remain the same. Employees will be required to complete telework agreements. So those are some of the tools to help guide and set that foundational expectation for staff.
And Aaron, is there anyone else you have partnered with on these efforts?
So partnerships have really been key to this endeavor. As I look at one of my partners now, Gabby, very grateful for GovOps and CalHR and Department of General Services for the resources and tools that they've provided in the departments and being open to innovative ideas. And I know those partnerships will be very strong. As I mentioned, our department stretches throughout the state. We have 12 districts, and they've worked locally with the customers and our business partners, the people throughout California, to make sure that we're still serving and meeting their needs. We've had the opportunity to partner with local government agencies such as the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, who have provided resources and tools and forums for us to be successful. We look to vendors too, and external, what is private sector doing that has been successful, and what are other state agencies doing to be successful. We look at it from a CalTrans perspective, but we want to look at it holistically as a state perspective. Leaders throughout the state, it's going to be up to all of us. It's our time to really step up, to lead change, and to make sure that we're focused on making a better California for all.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope you found the information shared today enriching and informative. Please remember to fill out the survey at the end of the program. Your feedback is appreciated.